5,126. That wasn't the number of vacuum cleaners James Dyson sold. It was the number he built and watched fail. For 5 long years, he kept making the same machine over and over again. While his savings disappeared, his family struggled to survive, and some of the world's biggest companies laughed at the very idea he believed would change everything. But here's the part almost nobody knows. Those companies didn't reject his invention because it was a bad product. They rejected it because it was too good. It threatened a business worth billions of dollars. So how did one man, working alone in a tiny workshop, defeat some of the biggest manufacturers in the world and build a company worth billions? This is the unbelievable story of James Dyson.
A man kneels on the floor of a small workshop in England, surrounded by broken plastic and cardboard. It is 1979. He has built the same machine, in slightly different form, over 2,000 times. Each one has failed. His wife is now covering the household bills with her income as an art teacher. His savings are gone. And still, he keeps building. His name is James Dyson. And the machine he is trying to perfect is something most people never think twice about: a vacuum cleaner. To understand why one man would risk his family's financial survival on a household appliance, you need to understand what was bothering him in the first place. Dyson wasn't a vacuum cleaner salesman. He wasn't even in the appliance industry. He was an industrial designer, trained at London's Royal College of Art, with a track record of solving mechanical problems other people had simply learned to live with. He'd already invented the ball barrow, a wheelbarrow that used a ball instead of a wheel to stop it sinking into soft ground. That product alone had made him a small fortune. But in his own home, something kept irritating him. His vacuum cleaner kept losing suction. He'd empty the bag, and within minutes, the machine was weaker than before. He pulled it apart to understand why. What he found was simple and infuriating. As dust filled the bag, its pores clogged. Airflow dropped. The suction dropped with it. Every bag vacuum cleaner on the market, from every major brand, worked this way. Millions of households were living with a machine that got worse the moment you started using it, and nobody had questioned it. Dyson had seen a different kind of technology before, one used in industrial sawmills. Giant cyclone towers spun sawdust out of the air using centrifugal force, with no filter needed at all. If cyclonic separation could pull sawdust from the air in a factory, he reasoned, could a smaller version pull dust from the air in a living room? It sounded almost too simple. And that simplicity is exactly what would make it so hard to sell. He built his first crude cyclone prototype by attaching a cardboard cyclone to his existing vacuum cleaner. It worked. Suction stayed strong, no bag needed. But turning a rough concept into a functioning, sellable consumer product was a different challenge entirely. The angle of the cone, the width of the cylinder, the airflow speed, all of it had to be tuned with mechanical precision. Get one variable wrong, and the whole system failed to separate the dust properly. So Dyson set up a workshop behind his home in the Cotswolds and started building. One prototype, then another, then another. Each one taught him something the last one hadn't. Each failure eliminated one wrong path and narrowed the search for the right one.
This went on for 5 years. 5 years of trial, adjustment, and disappointment, repeated thousands of times. By the time he had a version that worked reliably, he had built and discarded over 5,000 prototypes. The exact figure most often cited is 5,126 failed attempts before prototype 5,127 finally performed the way he needed it to. Most people hear a number like that and assume it must have felt unbearable. In some ways it did. But Dyson later described something different happening inside him as the failures piled up. Each broken prototype wasn't a dead end. It was data. It told him precisely what not to do next, which meant the field of remaining possibilities kept shrinking. Frustration and progress were happening at the same time, and it took years of relentless repetition to fully separate the two in his own mind. Financially, though, the pressure was real. He remortgaged his house. He borrowed against the ball barrow business. His family lived on tight margins for years while he chased something with no certainty of ever making a single sale. When he finally had a working, bagless vacuum cleaner, Dyson assumed the hardest part was behind him. He was wrong. The hardest part was about to begin. He approached the major vacuum cleaner manufacturers in Britain, expecting interest, maybe even a bidding war for the licensing rights. Instead, he was turned away again and again. The reason had nothing to do with whether his invention worked. It had everything to do with money the existing companies didn't want to lose. Replacement vacuum bags were an enormous, recurring revenue stream for every major manufacturer. A vacuum that never needed a bag threatened that entire business model. Why would a company license a product designed to destroy its own profit line? One by one, the doors closed. Hoover said no. Electrolux said no. Every major player in the industry passed. Dyson had built a genuinely better product, and the market's biggest players had every financial incentive to make sure it never reached shelves. It would have been reasonable at that point to give up. Instead, Dyson looked outside Britain entirely. In Japan, a smaller manufacturer called Apex Incorporated saw the invention differently. Japanese consumers, at the time, tended to place higher value on design and innovation, and were often more willing to pay a premium for something genuinely new. Apex licensed the technology and, in 1983, began selling a version called the G-Force, a bright pink, futuristic-looking cyclone vacuum sold through a Japanese catalog for roughly $2,000, several times the price of a conventional vacuum. It sold, not just to a niche market, but well enough that the G-Force won a design prize at Japan's International Design Fair. For the first time, Dyson had proof, real commercial proof, that people would pay more for a machine that simply worked better and didn't waste money on replacement bags. But there was a problem hiding inside this success. Dyson didn't own the company selling his invention. He was collecting licensing royalties from Apex, useful income, but nowhere near what he'd need to build something lasting. And back in the UK and the US, the vacuum cleaner giants still weren't interested. He had proven the idea could work commercially. He still didn't control it. So he made a decision that would define the rest of his career. Rather than continue licensing his technology to other manufacturers and taking a small royalty cut, Dyson decided to manufacture and sell the vacuum himself, under his own name, keeping full control of design, production, and profit. In 1993, using the royalty income from Japan along with additional financing, he opened a factory and research center in Malmesbury, England, and launched the Dyson DC-01. It carried a higher price than competitors. It looked nothing like a traditional vacuum, with its exposed clear bin showing the dust and debris being collected in real time, an intentional design choice that let customers see exactly how much dirt their old vacuum had been missing. Within 18 months, the DC-01 became the best-selling vacuum cleaner in the United Kingdom, ahead of Hoover and Electrolux, the very companies that had rejected licensing it years earlier. The machine they had refused to make was now outselling their own. From there, the company expanded methodically rather than recklessly. Dyson reinvested heavily in research and engineering rather than aggressive marketing spend, a philosophy that would carry through the company's next 2 decades. New products followed: bladeless fans that used air amplification instead of visible blades, hand dryers built around thin, high-speed air blades instead of heat, and eventually cordless vacuum technology that pushed the company into an entirely new category. By expanding into the United States and other global markets through the 2000s, Dyson transformed from a single-product British company into a global engineering brand. Today, Dyson is valued in the billions of dollars, and James Dyson himself has become one of Britain's wealthiest self-made entrepreneurs, all traced back to a man who once spent 5 years failing in a converted coach house behind his own home. What makes the story matter isn't the final number of prototypes. It's what he did in the years between failure 500 and failure 5,000, when there was no guarantee any of it would ever work, and no one but him believed it eventually would. The lesson isn't that failure is good. Failure, on its own, teaches nothing. What mattered was that Dyson treated every failed prototype as information rather than as a verdict on himself. He wasn't failing at building a vacuum cleaner 5,000 times. He was learning 5,000 times exactly what a working one would eventually need to be. That coach house behind his home is still there. So is the mindset that filled it, night after night, for 5 years, one broken prototype at a time, until the 5,127th one finally worked.